Welcome to A Diary of a Broke Nobody. It's basically Diary of a CEO, except instead of billionaires explaining how success is just mindset, it's regular people explaining how everything went slightly wrong and never fully recovered. This podcast is for anyone who wanted to get started, didn't know how, or did get started and immediately discovered that the plan was fake. I'm not successful. I don't have advice from the mountaintop. I don't have a course to sell you. What I do have is first-hand experience in being confused, behind, and quietly stressed while pretending everything's fine. So this isn't a success podcast. It's a group chat, a community project, a public diary for people who feel invisible and are tired of being told they're early in their journey. I'm building a community, probably Twitter, maybe Discord, maybe WhatsApp, called the Brotherhood of the Impoverished, Insignificant, Invisible Individual. Yes, the name is ridiculous. So is pretending we're all future millionaires. This podcast is about figuring things out in real time. No guru energy, no fake optimism. Just people comparing notes while the clock keeps talking shit. If you feel behind, lost, or like you missed the memo, good. You're exactly who this is for. All right, let's begin. Alright, so about me. My name's Hans Salisbury. I'm 22, born February 21st, 2003. Born in Canada. Parents are immigrants, which means ambition was mandatory, failure was optional but heavily frowned upon, and nobody explained how any of this actually works. So let's talk school. In high school, I wasn't stupid. I just didn't engage. I treated the whole thing like background noise, something happening around me while I waited for the real part of life to start. Spoiler, that was the real part. People love to ask, why didn't you plan ahead? I don't know. Why doesn't a broken GPS route you correctly? I wasn't thinking about careers or futures or retirement. My brain was operating on today-only mode. 5-year plans sounded fictional. Turns out later this wasn't a personality flaw, it was untreated ADHD mixed with trauma. Very common combo, very underdiagnosed, very funny in hindsight in a bleak way. I graduated in 2021, COVID era, everything online, which meant school became a trust-based system, and trust was immediately abused by everyone involved. After that, I took a gap year, for self-discovery. What I discovered was that time does not pause while you're confused. That's when I developed what I half-jokingly call chronophobia, the fear of time passing without permission. ADHD really enhances that. You're either living in the next 5 minutes or panicking about the next 50 years. There is no in-between. I wasn't diagnosed yet, by the way. I was just winging life with a brain that refuses linear timelines. Eventually, I went to college for a 2-year computer science-related diploma. Do I regret not going straight into a 4-year degree? Sure. In the same way you regret trusting a system that pretends everyone's brain works the same. Here's the funny part. I started college in September 2022. 2 months later, ChatGPT dropped. Academic honesty died instantly. Like, not slowly, immediately. The entire education system was suddenly running on vibes and plagiarism detection software. So, I adapted. I didn't suddenly become lazy. The incentives changed. Effort became optional. Shortcuts became optimal. I graduated with a diploma and absolutely no idea how to code. A ceremonial achievement. Very symbolic. Very useless. After that, I joined the workforce. First stop, DoorDash, which is basically exchanging vehicle depreciation for existential clarity. Then I became a security guard. Got hired, got fired, twice. One company fired me after a few months for reasons that still feel theoretical. The other fired me on my second shift because of coworkers who treated professionalism like a personal attack. At that point, I realized something important. Maybe I wasn't failing. Maybe I was just incompatible with jobs designed to grind people down and then act surprised when they break. So naturally, I made the most reasonable decision possible. I enrolled in medical laboratory science. Yes, a notoriously difficult program, chosen by someone who, at the time, still didn't know he had ADHD. That went exactly how you'd expect. I failed out. No twist, no redemption montage, just data confirming the hypothesis. Then, last year, I finally got diagnosed with ADHD. Suddenly, everything made sense. Not in a comforting way, more like, oh, that explains the wreckage. I'm medicated now. Some things work better, some don't. This podcast exists somewhere in that gray area. So where am I now? I'm not broken. I'm not lost. I'm not finding myself. I'm just standing in the aftermath of systems that promise structure and delivered chaos. If you're listening to this and thinking, yeah, same, congrats, you're not behind, you're just awake. And yes, sometimes it feels like it's already too late. But that's not wisdom. That's just the clock being dramatic. So I guess the real question is, what now? Because I don't know. I'm lost. I'm confused. I have no direction. I'm sitting in my car in a Tim Hortons parking lot recording a podcast about my life. If this were a movie, this would be the part where the narrator pauses and says, yeah, this is where it all stalled. Is this podcast supposed to make me successful? Maybe. That would be a nice plot twist. But realistically, this is more like documentation. The point isn't success. The point is that I don't want to be confused alone anymore. And I'm pretty sure there's an entire silent demographic of people exactly like this. Drifting. Functional. Technically alive. No clear next step. Just kind of buffering. Everyone else seems very confident, by the way. They're all on a path. Which is impressive because nobody can ever explain how they found it. So let's turn this into a conversation. What should I actually be doing? Do I go back to medical laboratory science and pretend the last failure was character development? Do I switch into medical radiation technology and double down on the medical field like maybe the third time is the charm? Do I go back and get a computer science degree just in time for AI to make that decision obsolete? What is the future? Is there one? Is it subscription-based? People love asking, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't know. I didn't even see myself here. 5 years ago, I thought adulthood would arrive with instructions. I'm 22 now. The idea of being 27 feels aggressive. Not because of the number, but because time stops being theoretical. You start noticing your parents aging. You start realizing expectations don't expire. They just sit there, waiting. I read Notes from Underground recently. Not as inspiration, more like a warning label. It's basically a manual for what happens when self-awareness, isolation, and inaction ferment long enough. And the scary part isn't how extreme the character is, it's how plausible he feels. And I don't want that ending. I don't want to wake up one day and realize I mistook waiting for thinking. So the real question isn't, how do I win? It's, how do we avoid quietly disappearing while still technically showing up? How do people who feel invisible, replaceable, and slightly out of sync build lives that don't feel like a punishment? I don't have answers. If I did, I'd be selling them. This podcast exists because I don't. There's a phrase my dad used to say, this too shall pass, which is comforting until you realize time passes whether you do anything or not. Passing isn't progress, surviving isn't direction, and waiting is still a decision. So what's the next move? No idea. But instead of pretending I do, I'm going to say it out loud, record it, and see who else is standing in the same parking lot, metaphorically or otherwise. That's what this is. That's why this exists. So yeah, that's where I'll leave it. This has been me, in a parking lot, thinking out loud. If you're here too, welcome.